Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Louis Van Amstel Podcast with me, Louis. You asked so many questions, so I just keep answering them. And if you have new questions, please go in the chat box, any chat box of any podcast. Just put in hashtag Ask Louis followed by your question, and I will answer them as long as they're not inappropriate. So I have all your questions right here. So let's take it away. Nicholas James, your question is, as a Pro-Am student, going back after several years of hiatus, what's some advice you'd give an amateur who is a bit nervous about getting back on the dance floor? Now, here's a simple answer to nerves. If you no longer feel nervous, it's time to hang up your dance shoes. So when you are nervous coming back, it tells me that you have a lot of love for dance and a lot of passion for it. So don't you ever worry about being nervous. It's when you're no longer nervous, that's when you should question if this is still a hobby that you should be doing. Here is I get this question a lot as a coach. Yes, you probably do more than 5 dances. So let's say you do Latin 5 dances and you do standard 5 dances. So that means you do 10 dances. Or you do rhythm, those have 5 dances, or smooth, 4 dances. Mostly people Pro-Am do 2 styles, right? So you have 9 dances. What adds to the nerves is that you're thinking of all these dances that you need to remember the choreography of. You have to remember the posture, the footwork, the partnering, all of that. So if you think of it all at the same time, you're going to be extremely nervous because you're in your head. So how do you get out of your head getting ready to compete? Well, break it down. 1 dance at a time. And that's not only at the day of the competition, that is also in preparation for your competition. So let's say you are a month before a competition. Don't start thinking of all that you need to do in the day of the competition. No. Right now, you pick dance 1, and I'm just going to use Latin as an example. So you start with samba. Only focus on samba. And really focus on all the layers that you've been working on, and do that to music. And repeat that with your coach, with your trainer, with your teacher. And then, how does that feel? Only focus on that 1 dance. And then your next practice, you work on the other one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one. So I'm actually explaining how we did it. 5 weekdays, 5 dances, 1 dance a day. So if you start with samba on Monday, Tuesday cha-cha, Wednesday rumba, Thursday paso doble, and Friday jive. 1 day, 1 dance. So you're not, while working on your bounce in samba, you're not going to think about your cucaracha and rumba or your drama, the drama of paso doble. No. Train the brain to really focus and hone in on 1 thing at a time. And then as you get closer to the competition, then you start saying, well, let's do them all 5 back to back. And you do that on Monday. And then you do that right away after your warm-up, right away on Monday, all 5 dances. And then you see where you're at. How did that feel? Well, the samba was good, cha-cha was okay, by rumba I lost it, and my paso doble and jive were a mess. Okay, great, now you know. What was it that didn't work out in rumba? Well, talk about it. And then practice that dance. Do it with music. Oh, great, we fixed it. Okay, now Tuesday, all 5 again. Great samba, a good cha-cha, an okay rumba, not so good paso doble, jive was a mess. Do you see where I'm going? You analyze it. You work on that paso doble now. And then you do all 5 dances again the following day. And you do that 5 days a week. Or if you do it on the weekends or every other day, set a plan, but break it down. Don't think all 5 dances at the same time are in your head. Take it 1 dance at a time. So now you're on the dance floor. Let's assume you make the final. You do your samba. Samba ends, but so does the samba in your head. Let it go. All you do is blink, empty your mind, and walk to the next spot on the dance floor. And now it's all about that cha-cha. Not rumba, not paso doble, no jive. Don't reflect on that samba. Cha-cha only. At the end of cha-cha, let cha-cha go for a moment, nothing, and now it's all about that rumba. At the end of the rumba, let rumba go. It's all about paso doble, not jive, not what you're going to have for dinner or what you have to do when you get home. No. Paso doble only. So again, you break it down 1 dance at a time. That way, you can really be in much more control over what you know. If you try to accomplish everything in your head of all the lessons that you've had, all the dances that you're performing, nothing will happen. So, 1 dance at a time, and then hone in physically, mentally, emotionally on that dance. I hope this truly helps you, Nicholas, and good luck with your comeback. Next question. Well, this is not a name. This is Edge Tech Admins. Okay, I would like to know, next time you ask a question, I'd like to know who is asking, because this sounds like a company. So let me see if that... okay, what's the question? How did you get asked to be on Dancing with the Stars in the beginning? Well, that's a fun story. That is actually going to be a whole podcast, because it's fun. So I'm going to tell you, I got called by a producer in England who was working on the BBC version. And I was still living in New York at the time. Sorry, I was teaching in New York. I was already living in Utah. And that's how I was asked from the BBC. But I'm going to do a whole podcast about where does Dancing with the Stars come from. Yes, England. But there's a whole story behind it. And I want to share it because it's fun. Because I was, with my English partner, I was part of the original version of what's now called Dancing with the Stars, but it wasn't called Dancing with the Stars. But I'm going to keep you in suspense. I'm going to do a whole podcast about that because it was a lot of fun to see that whole journey from then until what it is now. But I got a call from England, from the BBC. What I will say, though, the person that called me was a field producer with me, actually, in season 1 when I had Trista Sutter. His name is Joe Sunkur. And within, 5 years? He actually grew from field producer, the person that called me in 2005, to the show executive producer. I mean, how amazing is that story? So it's not just the celebrities and the dancers that become public figures or further their celebrity status. Also, the people behind the scenes have careers on this show. It's wonderful. So congrats, Joe Sunkur, on your success. So more about that, Edge Tech Admins. Carol Tangwall, I hope I said that right. Tangwall, your question is, dancing is such an athletic sport. What are the typical injuries dancers suffer? And what is the worst injury you have suffered and how long did it take you to recover? What kinds of things do you do to prevent these injuries? Well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions, but they're all related to injury prevention. So dancing, yes, it's a sport, and but it depends on what dance form you're in. I would say that ballet is prone to different injuries than ballroom dancing. We don't necessarily have to be flexible. We don't have to do splits left and right or do battement kicks next to your ear. Now, my partner and I did, but we were trained in the other forms of dance. So I would say the groin area, the inner thigh, lower back, those are really big issues. Now, you would think that ballroom dancing, knee and ankle and hip issues, but because we have so much hip action, we're actually keeping those hips so supple because we move them constantly. So our lower spine is actually very active. And because what we call swiveling in dance, that is twisting the body and moving from the standing leg. So we use the pressure of the standing leg to turn the feet and ankles. And because we have to do that in pretty much every single dance that we do, one way or another, we keep our ankles, knees, and hips actually perfectly aligned if done well. But since we learned this pretty much from the age of, well, I learned it when I was 12, but we have world champions at 12. So kids learn this already in serious dance class at the age of 6 or 7. So that's really healthy. So that's really nice to know that we don't have many leg injuries because we're using them in a very elegant way. But for me personally, because we were flexible, my partner and I, we did a lot of back bends. So my lower back needed a lot of stretching, and we also had massage therapy weekly. We took our sport very serious, and even in the 90s, many couples just went on the dance floor and used the first round to warm up. Not us. We would actually warm up. We would be the first ones in the building, and we would be there warming up for at least half an hour. Then we go on the dance floor and kind of warm up, to get the energy in our bodies, the atmosphere of the room, how high is the building, how wide are audience members all around, are there bleachers, how far up do they go? We warmed up our mind, body, and soul. So luckily, knock on wood, can you hear that? I'm knocking on wood. So I didn't have many injuries. I had one. And that was because I had a split in my routine, in my rumba. And I would slowly go down to the floor, slide my legs, and then about this much, about 3 inches, 4 inches above the floor, I would hold it, and I would then stretch and arch my body. And then I wouldn't go down, I would go back up. So we have the biggest competition in the world, the Open British, which is bigger than the World Championships in Blackpool, England. And I remember it's a long day. You start at 10 a.m. and you finish at 1 a.m. and you will have done 10 rounds. So I did it probably about 6 times. Sometimes I skipped it because there were other couples in our way, so I didn't do it. But then when you get more tired, I still pushed myself to do it. And I remember it was in one of the rounds and I was going down and I held it a little too long and I hurt this little in my groin. And it was okay. I finished the whole competition. Might I add, we won it. So we were now Open British, Open World Champions, besides World Champion that year. But that's for another story. So that little turned into probably a year and a half of me icing, stretching. I couldn't do those splits for a year and a half. But I took care of it. So after a year and a half, I was back at it and did it again. So when you hear a little, don't think it's nothing. Be mindful. And as a dancer, if I'm talking to dancers here, don't ever start practicing or competing without a proper warm-up. You will pay the price later in life. So now at 51, yeah, I had some shoulder issues, but that was because I was doing heavier weights. But then you take care of it and a few weeks later, it's gone again. Take care of your body. It's your home for the rest of your life. So thank you for asking me that question, because it's very important to talk about injury prevention, meaning have a proper warm-up. And also don't forget a cool down, also important. You need to help get your heart rate down. You need to stretch and lengthen those muscles so they can recover and go back to ground zero, so they're ready to work for you again later. Okay. Oh, this is a big question. Okay. Syed Ali Hassan. I hope I said that right. Syed Ali Hassan. You asked me. Okay, you're already anticipating. I hope you don't mind my asking this, Louis. And if you aren't allowed to discuss it, I totally understand. Okay, well, let's get to the question. I haven't read it yet. Was there a reason you weren't back on Dancing with the Stars for season 32 as a main pro? And is there a possibility we may see you on the show again? I was really hoping we would see you. It was so lovely to see you back to dance with Cheryl at. Thank you, Syed. And a follow-up question, how did you find out you would be coming back to season 31? Loving the podcast. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Well, I already answered that question. That, of course, I would love to be back on Dancing with the Stars. And I don't really know why I was not back on season 32. They won't tell you. But I do it. We love you, Louis. We always love having you back. So I have asked myself that question. Well, if you love me so much, why haven't I done 22 seasons? Why have I done only 11? So I take, you have to just, when I hear that, of course I'm a little bitter. Of course I'm disappointed, because I'm a person, as you've noticed, I'm a straight shooter. And I'll answer questions. Unless they're really heavily inappropriate, I won't. So I've had conversations with our casting director, Dina Katz, or our showrunner, Conrad Green, or other showrunners in the past. I don't get a straight answer. But what I do hear, we love you, Louis. So then why am I not back then? So I now, as I have produced my own shows, I have been on the organizing side, so on the other side of creating shows. I've done the 3 out of the 4 stadium tours for Dance with the Stars, co-director, choreographer, casting director, getting the dancers in. That's how Julianne and Derek Huff got on the tour and on the show. You're welcome. No, I'm kidding. That was like, I was doing that to myself. So I now put myself in the casting director's shoes. If you have 100 dancers that want to be in your spot, or you don't want to you don't want to destroy bridges, they have to be positive, because maybe I'm not on this season, but maybe I want to be back on another season. So I can only say I have a great relationship with Dina Katz, who is our casting director since day one. She is the show executive producer, one co-executive producer, and I have a great relationship with the original showrunner and now the showrunner of the last 2 seasons, Conrad Green. And I don't want to burn my bridge either. And I could say negative things about the show, but I'm not, because it is the reason why I've been giving all these opportunities. And we love to complain. And I will complain. But if I do it to the person that I have the problem with. I don't have a problem with you, so I'm not going to complain about something that I might have a problem with the producers with. I'm not going to. I have other pros that take care of that. Not me. Awesome. Well, I see 2 more questions here, so let's go through them quickly. Janet Henry, thank you for your question. If you didn't pursue ballroom dancing, what career choice would you choose? I love that question, because I have an answer for you. I believe I was 5 or 6 years old. And since the age of 6 months, of course I don't remember, but I hear that from my parents, we flew to Spain 4 or 5 times a year. So I've been on planes since I was half a years old. But then, of course, from 4, 5, 6 years old, I started remembering. I loved flying. And the dancers, if you know me as a dancer, I have a love for speed. If you've been in my car, I have a love for speed. I don't love breaking rules. I'm very safe, but I do like speed. So I wanted to be in the Air Force. I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. And the only reason why I didn't pursue that was the importance of math. I did not like math. And it wasn't even, I'm going away from the question, I didn't like math because when I went to high school, the entire year we did not have a solid teacher. Sometimes for weeks we didn't have math at all because there was no substitute teacher. And therefore, I didn't like math because when we did do it, we were behind. And the second year I was so behind. So I gave up on that idea. But also by that time, I was already dancing heavily because now I was 14, 15, and I was starting having a dance career. But originally, I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. When it comes to sport, I always wanted to be an Olympian Super G skier. But that didn't pan out because dance panned out very well for me. But dance was not on my list. Not in the top, it was in the top 3, but not top 2. Air Force pilot and skiing. And it all had to do with speed skiing. Super G, boom. And it's funny, side note, teaching my kids how to ski. First rule, no beelining. That means straight down the hill. If you go straight, I will take your ski pass away. It doesn't have to even involve the ski resort. Beelining is not a thing at major ski resorts because it's so dangerous, not just for you, but also for other skiers down. So my rule with my kids, if I see you beelining, I give you one warning, that's it. But they don't. They love technical skiing. They love turning. But then again, I was a little responsible for that. Turning. Learn to turn properly and turn in 4 different ways. Slalom, big G, carve. So, yeah. Janet, thank you for that answer. I still would like to become a pilot. So maybe that becomes a hobby later in life. Because here, Provo, you can do it in 6 months. It wouldn't be an F-16, but I still love flying. So who knows? Last question, Stina Palm. You asked, as a fellow European, Swedish, I am curious about your life in the Netherlands. Nothing specifically, just whatever you want to tell about it. Could we please hear some Dutch? Nou, ik kan in Nederlands tegen je gaan praten, maar dan kan waarschijnlijk niemand verstaan wat ik nu zeg. Dus hallo Nederlanders, als jullie luisteren. Ik ben Amsterdammer, geboren en getogen Amsterdammer. Ik ben uiteindelijk eerste 10 jaar van mijn leven heb ik in Zwaanshoek gewoond, de Haarlemmermeer. Toen verhuisd naar Hoofddorp, nog steeds de Haarlemmermeer. En toen ik 19 werd, heb ik met 2 roommates in Amsterdam gewoond. Edwin van Rijssen, die gaat bij Klep. Dat is zijn naam. En Roemjane de Haan, dat nog steeds een van mijn beste vriendinnen in Nederland is. I'm going back to English because you had no idea what I was talking about right now. So what I was saying is, I was born and raised in Amsterdam, in suburb of Amsterdam. The town, at that time, there were 1,500 people in that town, more cows than people, was Zwaanshoek, and that was the Haarlemmermeer. This lake, many, many years ago, was just water. It was just a big lake because the Netherlands is below sea level. That's why our dikes and dunes are so famous, because I believe we're the only country in the world that the entire country is below sea level. 90% of our country, I shouldn't lie. So I grew up there for the first 10 years of my life. Then we moved to Hoofddorp, and this is where pretty much I started dancing. The dance studio is still there. I still go there when I'm in Holland. My best friend, Wendy Salmons, runs the dance studio, and we talk frequently, even though we live many miles apart. So yeah, I grew up in the Haarlemmermeer, and many of you might have flown through Amsterdam Airport. It's called Schiphol, which is in the county where I grew up, the Haarlemmermeer. And the airport was actually between where I lived my teenage years and Amsterdam. The runway goes right through between, so I can see planes take off, and it's a big airport. So yeah, it fascinated me. And maybe to the previous question's answer, this is maybe why I was so inspired to want to be a pilot, an Air Force pilot. The need for speed and seeing them take off and land every single day of my pretty much teenage years. So yeah, I grew up in the Netherlands for 26 years. Then in 1997, I moved to the United States. I have moved to England too, back and forth with my British dance partners, Joanne Cartwright, and my most successful career dance partner, Julie Fryer. Yeah, so that's it about Holland a little bit. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to hang up my dancing shoes. We're not even dancing here. Anyway, I'm done for today. Thank you guys for joining in. If you have any questions, hashtag Ask Louis in the chat box, any chat box of any podcast. Just make sure hashtag Ask Louis. Thank you guys so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.